Today I've got David down from technical support, and he's going to show us how he made this lovely little pocket dart box with some simple pocket cuts and profile cuts.
Yep, and we're going to see if we can make it better.
So David, why a dart box?
A little while back I was walking to my local sporting establishment or pub, and yeah, the darts case that I had for my whole set was just falling out my jeans all the time.
Right.
Didn't have room for my wallet, so I wanted to create something a bit smaller.
Right. Well, it definitely is a lot smaller than something you fit in your pocket, and it looks really nice. Now, can you walk us through some of the things that you incorporate into this to make it work?
Yeah, so it's just a really simple 2D design, really, with pockets and profiles. Decided to go for a flat design because I didn't need anything too complex with magnetic fit. That actually led to one of the ideas for the change to make it a friction fit, so there's sideways movement,
right? Yeah.
Knock everything out. And I'd originally just put a placeholder of my name and a design on the back, and I just wanted to make it a little bit more universal.
Yeah. It's a great idea, and it's really quite customizable. Now, I think, David, I'm not in any way, shape, or form a dart aficionado. I've played darts maybe twice in my life, and but it would seem to me that probably darts come in different sizes, maybe?
Yeah, they do. There's a vast variety of different shapes and sizes. It's all personal preference.
Right. So this might not fit, your favorite dart person's set. So I suspect before you actually go ahead and cut this project on your own, you might want to make sure that you have the right measurements in there for all the crazy amount of parts that come with a dart. Who knew? Wow.
Yeah. So they're all over the place. So I did, in making this, I had to use calipers to accurately dimension the parts and use the simple drawing tools within the software to create the guide shapes, and then managed to pull it together into a good fit for the...
Yeah, as a first attempt, it worked really nice. And I love the way that you customized the outside of it, and I think that we definitely could play off that. Now, seeing as you've already cut this one, what would you like to make better in the end if we could?
So as I mentioned, the fit, if there's any lateral movement, then everything just falls out, which isn't ideal when you've got small parts.
Sure.
So change the fit. I'll need to make sure that the parts actually fit snugly, so I change the allowance slightly.
Okay, right, yes.
The design, as I mentioned, and I wanted to run a chamfer around the edge.
Oh, nice.
I found that in finishing, I had to do quite a bit of hand finishing to
sure.
put the sharp edges down.
Exactly,
Tight jeans. And
exactly, yeah. Well, that's great. So those things, I'm pretty sure that we can accommodate and make work. So, and actually, we have done some of the work already, and that's part of the fun of making a prototype ahead of time, is that we can take what we learned from that and then put it into something new using a lot of the work that David's already done. So with this job that we have here, I cut this just yesterday actually, and my main reason for cutting this was not, it's way too thick, but the idea was that I wanted to make sure that we got the lip right and the fit right, and still it's a little bit sloppy, so I think that we can do a little bit of work to make it better. So we're going to take a look at the file that I helped David make, and then he's also gone ahead and customized it yet again with a great story behind that. So when we get to that part, we'll talk to David a little bit more about why he chose his new design. So let's start off with, I've got a file already open in vcarve desktop here to look at. Now it's a double-sided job, so if you've never done a double-sided job before, this is going to be asymmetrical dowel flip, we call it, and we've got lots of videos online that you can look at that we really talk through this. But the main thing that we want to kind of talk about here is that when you choose this way of flipping things, when you go to cut your dowel holes into your spoil board, make sure that you use your toolpath from the second side, and you're cutting straight into your spoil board. You're zeroing off of that, not off of your material. It should be away from your machine. So anyway, so we take a look at the file here, and we see we've got dowel holes, we've got new vectors all laid up here, and David's gone ahead and slightly changed his design from this slightly coffin-looking one to more of a dart-shaped top, which I think is a nice touch. Let's flip over to our 3D view for a second, and because we already have the toolpaths made up, we're simply just going to walk through those and only point out the things that we want to make sure that you take into account all the stuff that could go wrong. Like David said earlier, they're just really basic profile and pocket toolpaths that I think pretty much everybody should know how to make from scratch. So let's jump over to our 3D tab for a second. Now we'll take a look at our material. Now David's chosen this new material here that he's got, which I think is probably sapele, and he's gone to the trouble, which is quite smart, and a lot of people will do this, to mark out where his actual job is going to be on there. It is a bit thick, is that correct?
Yes, yeah,
Right.
I'm planing it down with a surfacing pocket first. So.
Right, exactly, that's right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the pocket toolpath that he's going to use to make sure this is nice and flat.
Yep.
And that's really important because the top lip of this needs to make sure it rests flat on the inside of your lid. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to do some sanding to get this flat. And there's a couple of different techniques to do that. But if you just simply incorporate in a pocket toolpath, then you're good to go. It'll be nice and flat. So that's the first toolpath we're going to look at here. He's using a 1/4 inch end mill for this, and he's going to cut down 4 millimeters. Now, we're going to use this cut depth here as a start depth for all of his other toolpaths for this side, so that they start at the right level of the box.
Yeah, because the software essentially doesn't know that you've removed material. So.
Exactly, that's right. And so that's a really good idea. And keep that in mind when you're doing it, not to forget to add that start depth in. So it's a very basic toolpath. We're just going to go ahead and close this down, and we'll preview that visible toolpath so you can see exactly what you should see. Now, one thing that's really nice about our software is that the 3D preview of your toolpath should be exactly what you cut on your machine, assuming that your machine is set up properly. So that's good to remember. So you don't have to cut anything. If it doesn't look right in the software, definitely don't cut it.
Yep.
Don't do it. Make sure that it looks right or what you expect. So there's that pocket. Now the next thing we're going to look at is going to be the groove pocket. Now, David has a unique way of naming his files or naming his toolpaths. So this is actually the inside, I believe, is it not, David, of the actual, the pocket, the extra lip here?
It is, yeah, it's the surface of the face down. So it's my own terminology. I was thinking tongue and groove, but it's not at all. But it's to create that lip, as Todd said. And you also want to make sure that you have a bit of an allowance for the edge fit into the face of the opposing part.
Exactly, that's right, yeah. So if we take a look at this toolpath, you'll see that this one here is a simple. There's that start depth we talked about a second ago, that 4 millimeters right at the very top there. He's going to cut down an extra 4 millimeters. That's going to be the inside lip of this.
Yep.
And then we can just go ahead and preview that, and you'll see exactly what we saw, or what you hope to see on the machine. And there we go right there. So that's that inside pocket. So that's the pocket just above where he's going to recess in those holes for his dart parts. Okay, that's great. The next one is going to be the tongue. Let's close this down for a second. If we take a look at this, now this is where we actually, I believe this is the toolpath that you chose to add your allowance. So talk us through why you chose, first of all, the allowance on this side over here, and where you put it.
Yeah, so I chose to put it on the outside of what I'm terming the tongue, because I knew that I had enough material with the 2 mil groove to be able to take that material off, and it just made sense to put it on the outside because I wasn't having to think about the 2 pockets, because I've merged the 2 separate operations into one pocket toolpath.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I don't want an allowance on both sides. So.
Good point, exactly, that's right. So he's actually making this lip a bit thinner than the 2 millimeters he thought. That way it'll fit in there. Now, as I said, when I cut this one, I used a minus 0.07 allowance, and David's gone ahead and tightened that up a little bit. So hopefully on the new one he's going to cut today, it should fit nice and tight together. Fingers crossed. If not, we can just adjust it again and we'll recut it again. So that's great, perfect. So let's just go ahead and close that down, and we'll preview that visible toolpath again, or selected toolpath. And the nice thing about this too is if we go into our 2D view for a second and we turn on our solid preview of our toolpaths and we zoom in on this, you'll actually see that he's actually overcut into that a little bit, and you can see that right in your 2D design. So if by mistake you're unsure of whether you're going plus or minus, just check that to make sure that you're going the right direction. Let's flip back to our 3D view again, and we'll have a look at the next toolpath. Now this is the partial cutout. So David and I had a little bit of discussion about where we should put our tabs on this particular job. And I was a bit concerned that if you cut the tabs on the back side, then there's nothing for the tab to hook onto because you've got that lip in the way.
Removing the
so our solution was to?
Cut down partially on the top side, so that the tab doesn't sit all the way on the bottom, and then complete the rest of the cutout profile on the back.
That's right. So we've actually shortened the cutout profile on the back, so we don't cut through those tabs, but it will leave those tabs intact, and they actually have something to hold on to without having to make like these huge, stupid, thick tabs that are nuts. So that's another top tip for you, that think about your tab placement and how you can do that, especially in a double-sided job, because you have some control on where those will land on your part. So that's really great. So he's decided to go down a cut depth of 4 millimeters, which is 4 plus the other 4, don't forget. So that's 8 millimeters actually. That's halfway through this material. So that's pretty good. So let's close that down. Let's just preview that right quickly. And you see that on the top side, we're cutting past that lip. So we've got a little bit of a lip there, which is perfectly fine. And our tab will actually sit on the other side of that lip, which is great. The next one is going to be for the actual parts of his darts. So let's take a quick look at that. Again, nothing special about that. Just make sure that you measure them up and your vectors are correct for your darts. And David's chosen to use a 1/8 inch end mill for this. That way you can get into those small little details, I'm assuming, that you need, the small little parts. So let's just go ahead and close that down. And we'll preview that toolpath. And so far it's looking exactly what I've got in my hand here, which is really nice.
Looks like darts.
And the last toolpath is the dowels. So we're not going to preview that, but actually you can decide how far you want to cut down in your material. Make sure that you adjust the radius or the diameter of those dowel holes that David's created to fit your dowels if you want to cut this one, so everything works out in the end. That's great. Let's flip it over to the other side now and have a look at your second side. Now, David has come up with a really unique design for the top side of his box, opposed to what he's done in the past, which was this definitely a unique design as well, with your name on one side and a heart with a dart through it, I guess.
Don't put your name on things.
So David, talk us through why you chose this particular design.
So with darts being so unique to the individual, I thought a fingerprint being the most unique.
Right. Now, is this your fingerprint?
Feature of a human. No, it's not. No, that's. I mean, I could have done that. I could have taken a picture and scanned it and drawn it. Yeah. But no, I found this online. It was free to use, open source file.
Ah, nice. It looks
SVG
really
import.
Oh, really? For SVG? So it was already vectors originally, so it wasn't bringing in a bitmap and tracing it?
Yeah.
It had the SVG to start with. So.
Yeah, no, already all there to go. Just overlaid it and used the clipping tools to clip it.
Oh, nice. The shape, perfect. Okay, that's great. So, and you're going to use just a V-bit for that, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Great, okay, cool. So it's very basic. It looks like a vcarve toolpath he has set up here. He's got a bit of a flat depth, I'm assuming, just in case it goes too deep. You didn't want it to go through?
Yeah, with it being a double-sided part, and we've got pockets on the other side, and needed to be careful with that. And also no start depth, no, because we haven't removed any material.
Ah, good point, exactly, that's right. So on this side, forget about that start depth thing, because we haven't done anything to it. So excellent point. Let's close that down. So we're gonna preview that toolpath, and that looks really good. I love that. That's gonna look really nice. Now, you had also, I can see the next toolpath is gonna be a chamfer toolpath.
Yeah.
Is that chosen for any particular reason?
Yeah, did practical reasons. So I had to do a lot of hand finishing to take the sharp edge off this.
Oh, right, yeah.
So obviously with it being pulled in and out your pocket.
Oh, yeah, smart. Yeah, okay, right.
Accidents.
So let's have a look at that toolpath. So the chamfer toolpath is a pretty easy tool. If you've never used it before, it's a pretty easy toolpath to set up. It's a matter of taking a V-bit and running it along a vector. But there are some things that you want to keep in mind, and David's had some experience with things like that. So let us know what the top tips are for this toolpath.
Yeah, the main thing is to keep in mind that all the settings are all tied together and they're linked to the tool geometry. So if you're not able to get a specific width with a certain cut depth, just check your tool settings. Make sure that you've selected the V-bit that you're intending to use. And also there's the overcut.
The overcut is great, yeah, because what it allows for you a couple things. One is that you can cut past the edge of your chamfer, which, let's say your V-bit is broken or something wrong with it at the tip of it. You can actually account for that. So you can use an old, maybe broken V-bit that you thought was garbage now. You can actually use it in the chamfer toolpath. And also, I believe it gives you a much nicer finish in the end.
Yeah, because you can remove any unsightly witness marks.
Nice, perfect. That's great.
So tooltip.
Some things to think about. Now, and the chamfer type, again, this is one of those things that you're going to need to play around with and decide which is the right type for you. In this case, David is going to be cutting on the inside of the line, and he's sloping it downwards. But if you don't get the exact shape you want to, go ahead and mess around with those settings. And if worse comes to worse, or if you want to, just read the instructions or our documentation. Just press the little question mark up in the corner and you can get all kinds of information on how that all kind of comes together. And we also have a video for that too, how to use the chamfer toolpath. So that's all good. So let's just go ahead and close this down, and we are going to preview that toolpath. And you'll see we get a nice sort of chamfer around the outside edge. Now, with this particular thing, which one are you going to cut first? Are you going to cut the chamfer first and then your design, or are you going to go with the design and then the chamfer?
I'm going to go with the design first and then the chamfer.
I think that's probably the right bet, exactly, yeah. So that way you can actually trim off the edges of that in the end, and any kind of chipping and so on won't matter so much. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. I'd try it that way too. And see.
I'm glad you said that.
Well, you never know. Some of these things are kind of interesting.
Sure.
And then we're going to do a cutout of this, and you'll see this is going to cut us all the way through. And this is where David's decided to put his tabs. And you'll see in a second that when we preview that, let's take a look at that for a second, sorry. He's got a cut depth of 8 millimeters. So remember on the top side, it was 4 plus 4, that's 8. On this side, it's another 8, so it's 16 mil. These should lay exactly in the center of his material, which is perfect for where we want it to be, avoiding that lip, making sure everything gets held into place okay. When I cut this sample, my tabs were a bit big and a bit hard to remove, and I believe that David's gone ahead and made them a bit smaller, so that'll make life a lot easier when it comes to getting this thing out and finishing.
The hard work for me.
Oh, and also we've chosen to use 3D tabs. Again, that's a personal choice. When it comes to using 2D tabs, sometimes you get interesting dwell marks where your tool kind of sits as it moves up and over the tab, and you'll get like a little bit of an indent. You might see that in some of your parts. If you use a 3D tool, 3D tab, it actually raises up and it keeps moving. So you shouldn't have those witness marks left behind. Okay, next toolpath we're going to look at is going to be this is the dowel hole toolpath. Now, typically you would run this first, right? Not last.
Yep.
We put it last, that way it looks better as we talk through the toolpath. But definitely when you get this file, this is actually going to be at the top of your toolpath list. So you're going to cut this one before you actually put your material back down again.
Yeah.
Make sure everything's lined up perfectly. Okay, well that's it. I think that's it, David. I think maybe what we should do next is save these toolpaths off.
Yeah.
And run them over the CNC machine and cut them, and then we can come back and see how it all works out. Wow, David, that turned out really nice, and I can see where the things that you learned from your first version and then our other prototype really paid off in the end for this one.
Yeah, really happy with it. Much happier with the hand feel of this.
Yeah, that chamfered edge makes a world of difference.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it feels much better. It looks a lot smaller, although it is thinner, but it does look smaller, so it's great. Well, if you want to make one of your own, you can download the file right now from your V&Co account. It'll be there for you to download and to make your own if you'd like to. Well, thanks again, David. Really appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
Great idea. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and jump into the software, use David's file, and I'm going to make it just a little bit my own because I think I like to have my own. Okay, so I have David's file opened up here in vcarve desktop. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our 3D view, and then I'm going to flip to the other side for a second. So I'm okay with the top side of his project. I like everything about it. I did have to make a few slight changes to it. And again, I'm not going to show you how I did that because it's one of those things that is going to be very dependent on the darts that you have. So my dart that I have here, which I've ordered online, is a bit fatter than David's and a bit longer. So I had to go ahead and change the actual, I'm not sure what you call this bit here, but the the pointy end bit of the dart. I had to change the pockets that David created to make sure this is going to fit in there. So I've done that already on the top side of this and recalculated the tool paths. It was pretty easy to do, just took a little bit of measuring and so on. So that was great. Now here I am on the back side. So when David first talked about this project and I saw his original prototype that he did, I thought this is prime for the vector texture toolpath. I think it's really cool with kind of a wavy texture on it. And it happens to be that the material that I'd like to use for my version of this is maple, and it's a little bit thicker than what David's was. I am going to pocket down like he did, but on the back side it's going to be thick enough that I could put a nice bold sort of undulating texture on it using the vector texture toolpath. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle just on the back side here, right in the 3D view. It doesn't need to be any particular size. I just need it to be bigger than the backs of this box. So I can close that down. That looks really good. And I'm going to use the vector texture creator over here in our create vectors tool or section of our tab. So I'm going to grab that. Now what's nice about this, I'm not going to go through all of these different options here, but you can come up with all kinds of great vector textures to then develop a tool path with. So I'm going to start off with 45 degrees. So my texture is going to be at 45 degrees. I'm going to use a line spacing of about 5 millimeters. Now I chose 5 millimeters because I know that I'm going to use a 6.35 inch ball nose or a quarter inch ball nose end mill, and that's just under the size of the diameter of that tool. So I think that's going to make for a nice bold texture, and the variation I just set right there, so it's actually going to change the spacing between those lines just slightly based on the variation that's there. The amplitude and wavelength, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to choose that the height of my peaks will be 5 millimeters, and then how long they'll be between those peaks will be 50 millimeters. And that can be whatever you want depending on what kind of texture you want it to be. I've totally said no to noise, and I'm going to place these vectors on a whole new layer called vector texture. And I'm going to preview that. And we're going over to our 2D view for a moment, and you'll see that in the 2D view, I've got those vectors. And you'll see that they kind of vary in distance between each other, which is exactly what I'd like to have. So I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to jump over to our toolpaths tab for a second. Now I've deleted out the toolpaths that David had that I didn't need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a toolpath using the texture toolpath option. So I'm going to select those vectors, and I'm going to use, as I said, that quarter inch ball nose end mill. I'm going to start right at the top of my material. Now if you've never used this texture toolpath, really again, it's one of those ones that there's all kinds of options here. You can come up with all kinds of neat sort of variations on this sort of thing. So definitely play around with this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I tell it that I'm going to use those selected vectors, okay, the ones that I created ahead of time. I'm going to give it the maximum cut depth is about half of the diameter, so the radius of my tool. I thought that might give me enough depth in between these different lines to make it look really good. And we'll see in a second when we preview the toolpath. And we can just simply go ahead and calculate that. Now let's preview that visible toolpath, and we'll see what we're going to get. You'll see that we get this nice kind of texture here where we got some nice deep sort of, I guess, channels and some lighter channels, and the way they run together give you a nice sort of interesting texture. I think it's going to be give me a nice grip, and especially compared to David's fingerprint and the way that turned out, I think this is only going to look really cool. So let's close this down. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to add a chamfer to this, but not using the chamfer toolpath. I'm going to do it because I want a slightly different shape. I'm going to use my quarter inch ball nose as a profile toolpath to go around the edge and only keep half of that. So it's going to look like a nice sort of inside dip to the edge of this. So if I go ahead and look straight down at my job, hold down my shift key and grab those two outside vectors and unselect the texture that I created. It's kind of hard to see, but you'll see it in a second. And then I go to my profile toolpath. I'm going to start depth at 0, which is fair. I'm going to go down the radius of my tool, okay, which I think will be kind of nice. It'll give it kind of like a half circle kind of look. Using that quarter inch ball nose, I'm going to go on the line, and we're just simply going to go ahead and calculate that. Now if I preview that visible toolpath, you'll see that now what I'm going to get is this nice sort of shape around here. Kind of like the chamfer that David did, but just a slightly different shape, using the geometry of my tool to give me a little bit different form, I guess you could call it, around the edge. The next thing we're going to do is we'll go ahead and preview that cutout toolpath. And then we're going to see what we're going to get in the end. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. I haven't previewed the other side, but if I did, you would see that it would cut through. But that, I think, would look really nice. Now, in saying that, I think this project is prime for customization. That's why I wanted to run you through that. There's all kinds of things you can do to this pocket dart box to make it your own, or even make as a product to sell. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed that video a lot. It was nice having David on board for this whole thing and actually helping him through one of his projects. And I think together we came up with a really nice end result. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do that. If you have any comments below for David or I, please leave them below and we'll get to those as soon as we can. And don't forget to jump over to your V&Co account. I'm going to include my version of his file as well, so you have two different options to try. But again, don't forget, make sure you measure up those darts and make sure they fit before you cut your own. Until next time, I hope you have fun making.